Good morning, Napa Valley Unitarian Universalists, and welcome to this week's online worship service. I am Lenore Hirsch, and I am the celebrant for this morning's service. Our guest speaker today is Reverend Dr. Betty Stapleford. Reverend Dr. Betty Stapleford has been involved in social justice since her days of civil rights action in Atlanta, Georgia in the 60s, and has been involved in numerous social justice causes in Ventura County since her arrival in 1998. She served as the minister of the Conejo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Thousand Oaks for 12 years, the consulting minister of the UU Church of the Verdugo Hills for 5, and is now the affiliate community minister for social justice at the Universalist Unitarian Church of Santa Paula. She is also the co-chair of Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice and the president of the UU Justice Ministry of California. Brian Shaw is our musician, and May Vader is helping us with technology. May will be recording this service to post on our YouTube channel later on. You are welcome here if you come skipping with joy, and you are welcome if you are heavy with sorrow. You are welcome if you are deeply lonely, and you are welcome if you are surrounded by friends and family. You are welcome whomever you love, whatever your gender, whatever your skin color, whatever your education, whatever your beliefs about God or not God, and whatever the flags of your heritage. You are welcome if you are looking for a community that will love you just as you are, and you are welcome if you seek a community that will help you grow. Whoever you are and whatever you need, you are welcome here. Now let us center ourselves through music. Our flaming chalice was originally created to recognize the work of our Unitarian Service Committee members in rescuing refugees from Nazi persecution in the mid-20th century. And this Sunday, we join in common purpose with Unitarian and Universalist congregations throughout the world as we light our chalice flame to honor that spirit of dedication in our time and place. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Let us now join in singing our opening hymn. I invite you now into a moment of receptivity and reflection as we share the joys and sorrows of this community. We make sacred the milestones of our lives when we share them with each other. We have here a bowl of water and some stones. If you would like to share your joy or sorrow with all here, you can type it into the chat, if the chat is working, and then choose a stone in the bowl to represent your joy or sorrow. If you have a joy or sorrow, or even just a concern that you do not need to share with everyone, type stone in the chat and then choose a stone in the bowl to represent the milestone you are holding in the silence of your heart. If you are holding something heavy in your heart and would like to speak to a member of our pastoral care team, please reach out to us. Leave a message at 707-226-9220 and someone will contact you. And if you're not able to type into the chat, hold your thought in your heart and we will all share it.
Dear unknown, unknowable, yet known by many names, keep us mindful that we are all related, that when one of us is ignored and treated with dis-ease, we all suffer. Today, let each of us commit to welcome the stranger. Let us move beyond our comfort zones and connect with people labeled different and push to the edges of society. We can make a difference. We can transform lives. We can bring harmony and healing to the places and spaces where we live, work, and play. Let us keep our hearts and minds open and receptive to the still small voice that calls us to stand witness for those who cannot stand, to speak the truth for justice for those without a voice, and lead the way on the journey toward wholeness for those without sight. In the spirit of love, compassion, and community, let it be done. Amen. And now let us join in a moment of silence to keep those words and the stirrings of our hearts at rest as we join together. To be strong enough to gain some mastery over ourselves and humble enough to be willing to learn from others. To be brave enough to choose the right word, no matter how hard it may be, and patient enough to keep it on in spite of obstacles. To be wise enough to know our own shortcomings and honest enough to admit the excellence of others. To be proud enough to command the respect of strong individuals and gentle enough to win the love of little children. To be careful enough to protect the goods of others and generous enough to share our own. This is our aspiration for today. Greetings to all of you. I am glad to be with you here this morning. Social justice is my passion and my profession. I consider it my job to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. It was originally said about journalists and later about ministers. But for me, it is a calling like no other. This sermon is personal for me, and I hope for you. And I hope we can talk during your social hour after the service about any ideas you have or reactions you have to what I'm going to tell you today. But first, I need to share a confession. I was a civil rights activist in Atlanta, Georgia in the 60s. And somehow I thought that experience had immunized me from racism. I have since discovered it did not. And I'd like to share a little of my journey with you in the last 25 to 30 years. I first became aware of the Reverend Jim Wallace about 20 some years ago. He's an evangelical minister who has all the credentials of that profession, but he is the founder of the Sojourners Community and the Sojourners Magazine. His book, that was eye-opening for me, is called America's Original Sin: Racism, White Privilege, and the Bridge to a New America, published in 2016. I went to a presentation that he gave back when we could do that sort of thing. And one of the things that impressed me about him was that he went at the end of his presentation, he invited people to come forward and ask any questions. And he said, I only have one rule, and that is that every time a man speaks, a woman needs to follow him. That impressed me. And I've since read a number of things by him that have impressed me even more. He talks in his book and in his life about our history from the earliest days to today, including his own experience. He talks about the Native American reservations, African slavery, the treatment of the Chinese in early California, Jim Crow laws, Japanese and German internment camps in World War II, the lynching of Black men and some women, the large percentage of people of color in our prisons, detention centers for undocumented today, and I would hasten to say there are 200 of such centers in our country, with 7 in California. Shootings of unarmed Black men, more since his book was published. And so I think we need to ask ourselves why we haven't fixed racism yet. I thought we had done it back in the 60s and lived much longer to discover that that was only the beginning. We had changed laws, but not hearts. Racism is alive and well in our country today, as we see from numerous news articles and commentators on radio and television. But we could say, well, wait a minute, I'm not a racist or a white supremacist. I'm colorblind. I'd like to tell you a story about a meeting I went to at Surge. It is a group of people, white people, who talk about racism and what they can do to change it. At that meeting, there was an older Black woman who was sitting there, and she looked at all of us in our discussions and she said, if you can look at me and see that I am a Black woman and say that you're colorblind, then you're not just colorblind, you're blind. I'm sitting right here with you. And I remember back in my days of the civil rights movement when a young woman from New York was visiting with one of our planning meetings for a swim-in or a sit-in or something. And she said, you know, I think I like it here in Atlanta, Georgia. At least here, You know what the rules are. When I go back to New York, they'll tell you what the rules are, but they really aren't. My first, well, no, not my first, but certainly a recent awareness came from a book called White Fragility: Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. It's available in our UU bookstore. It's published in 2018. She talks about the difficulty we white people have talking about racism and admitting that we are somehow implicated in that fact. Unfortunately, we need to be, we think, sometimes forgiven by BIPOC folks. We can't do that for ourselves. We can't change ourselves. We have to depend on other people to do that. There are other recommended books for me to suggest, and I will post after my sermon in the chat a list of them that I have found particularly helpful. But then I look at or remember a saying by one of my Black colleagues who said, what we progressives do when we get to a difficult social justice issue is that we start a book group. And I think that's well made, well intentioned. I've certainly been a part of many such groups and I found them very useful, but it doesn't take the place of real work. We may say, but I don't tell racist jokes or call people of color bad names. I have a number of BIPOC friends and I don't treat them as inferiors. I don't disrespect people of color. But you and I are racist if we're white in this country. It is in the air we breathe, the water we drink. A term that I've taken for myself, and I just had a Black friend tell me she could admire that, is a recovering racist, a racist in progress, in process. But we live in a white supremacist culture. We have white privilege in jobs, in housing, in education, in COVID vaccines, and in many other ways, if we really think about it. When I walk outside my front door today, I don't have to worry about what I'm going to face because I am white. That isn't to say that bad things don't happen to all of us. But we suffer, many of us, and I will tell some stories about myself, from implicit racism. And that is not that we try to cover up our racism, it's just that we don't always even see it. We don't see the institutional bias and so many other things that we are oblivious to. I don't know how many of you are aware of the Harvard implicit bias test. There are many versions, but the one I experienced was one about Black and white bias. I took the test and I didn't do as well as I thought I should have. And so instead of accepting what the test told me about myself, I began to think of all of the ways that that test was biased in and of itself. It wasn't telling me that I was really as bad as it said. It's just a flaw in the test. And then another experience I had, and this is really embarrassing for me to share. Some of you may have gone to an Apple store to get something fixed or get some expert advice. And so I went looking to find out something about my iPhone. And as those of you who have gone know, you sit down and you wait and someone shows up and tells you what to do about your iPhone. And I was sitting there for a while and I saw this young Black woman with dreadlocks coming toward me. And I, without even missing a beat, thought to myself, what on earth can she tell me about my phone? I was ashamed. And when she came forward and took my phone and we had a very pleasant conversation, she knew exactly what to do about my phone. Now, where did that come from? It was certainly not a thing I would have wanted to think. It just popped into my brain. And maybe you've had an experience, maybe not quite as embarrassing and bad as that, but I think many of us do. Just our language shows a bias. Consider these examples from Unitarian Universalist Jackie James. She writes, blackmail, blacklist, black market, Black Monday, Black Mood, Black Hearted, Black Plague, Black Mass, Black Market. Good guys wear white, bad guys wear black. We fear black cats and the dark continent, but it's okay to tell a white lie. Lily white hands are coveted. It's great to be pure as driven snow. Angels and brides wear white. Devil's food cake is chocolate. Angel's food cake is white. We shape language and we are shaped by it. In our culture, white is esteemed. It is heavenly, sunlight, clean, pure, immaculate, innocent, and beautiful. At the same time, black is evil, wicked, gloomy, depressing, angry, sullen, absorbing negative and positive values in black and white, enhances the institutionalization of this culture's racism. Let us acknowledge the negative connotations of whiteness. White things can be soft, vulnerable, pallid, and ashen. Light can be blinding, bleaching, enervating. Conversely, we must acknowledge that darkness has a redemptive character, that in darkness there is power and beauty. The dark nurtures and protects us before our birth. Welcome darkness. Don't be afraid of it or deny it. Darkness brings relief from the blinding sun, from scorching heat, from exhausting labor. Night signals permission to rest, to be with our loved ones, to conceive new life, to search our hearts, to remember our dreams. The dark of winter is a time of hibernation. Seeds grow in the dark and fertile earth. The words black and white don't need to be destroyed or ignored, only balanced and reclaimed in their wholeness. The words white and light don't need to be destroyed or ignored, only balanced and reclaimed with that wholeness. Imagine a world that had only light or dark. We need both, dark and light and dark. But we say heroic efforts. 19th century American Unitarians and Universalists like Theodore Parker and Benjamin Rush were there to fight for abolition, slavery, and supporting the Underground Railroad. John Haynes Holmes and the establishment of the NAACP and the ACLU. Unitarian Universalist minister and social activist James Reeb in Selma, who died on March the 11th, 1965. As a result of blows he received from one of 4 white men after dinner, where Reeb had shared his time with two other ministers. Many ministers and lay people went to Selma. The UUA board, in fact, dismissed its session and went to Selma. We have a strong history. UU Viola Liozzo was inspired to go to Selma, where she lost her life to a sniper's bullet after she had transported Black marchers from Montgomery to Selma on March 25th, 1965. And they're modern day Unitarians and Universalists fighting for racial justice, fighting for so many things that have made our lives whole. But we need to remember that we have also not always walked our talk. We have, in the 1970s, a very dark history where many Black Unitarian Universalists left our movement, including those people like Bill Sinkford, who returned, but many others who did not. And so here we are this day, wondering whether conditions are really better today than they were in the 1960s, or has racism just gotten more subtle and hidden among progressive people. Our failures back then hopefully have been counteracted or countermanded by our recent history with Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Unitarian Universalists. And I'm not suggesting here today that we beat ourselves about our failures and talk about our guilt and how bad we feel for all those terrible things that happened. But I submit that some of the same attitudes that reassured those sincere, albeit misguided people, and not just in the South in the 1960s, can still be part of our own lives if we believe that we have found the answer by simply saying politically correct words like diversity or racial justice or multiculturalism or BIPOC, and continue to live our lives with business as usual. We can be just like those people, past and present, who have gone through life without our high-sounding ideals. We can attend some of the numerous workshops devoted to multiculturalism and even vote for the anti-racist proposals that are put up by our tradition, but still complacently go back to living our lives as usual, believing the right things without acting on those values in any transforming way. We can say that the doors of our churches are open to people of all races, regardless, and feel justifiably proud about that. But you and I, after all, are still part of a predominantly white denomination. So what can we do as individuals and congregations? One is to find out as much as we can and to face our own blind spots, to become aware of the subtleties of racism in ourselves and others, confront our own racism and the racism that we hear the speech of others without responding to it. We can speak out against racism and for justice and find ways to act for good in our community. One of the things that our denomination has done is started a new program, now virtual, called Virtual Beloved Conversations. It has gone on for the last year. I have been a participant both in the live and the virtual program. And the fall program, starting on September 21st through mid-December, is still available. I suggest that you look into it if you're interested. It is talking about racism within. The other two sessions were about racism in the larger community and then racism within our own denomination. It was developed by Dr. Mark Hicks from Meadville Lombard School for the Ministry, and I commend it to you if you want to go further. What are our Unitarian Universalist values that support anti-racism? Now, I know you're not supposed to have favorite principles, but I confess, I do. My three favorites actually, are the fact that we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, not just the people we like or the people like us. And sometimes I know that's hard because we really don't want to be connected people that have different values than our own. And the fact that we believe, we affirm and promote, and I think that's really important. We say them, we affirm them, but we also work to make them true. We affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion. And the third one that I think is as important, although not seemingly directly correlated, is the fact that we believe in the interdependent web of all and going out into the world and making that true. Sometimes we think about that as being all about wild animals and our animal companions. It's really about the interdependent web of all existence, of which we all are a part. But what are our competing values? Sometimes we say these wonderful things, and then we're really afraid of changing anything. Our tradition can give us comfort, an exaggerated sense of our own self. We can become fairly self-righteous. I'm not speaking about any of you, of course, but I know that I can. Of course, we believe the right things. Our big assumptions are right in line with, and we love everybody, don't we? Don't we? Here's the thing that bothers me, and I had an experience with Morris Dees from, as you may know, Morris Dees organization that has worked tirelessly, the Southern Poverty Law Center. And he was giving a speech, and we were asked to ask questions at the end. And I stood up feeling pretty self-righteous at the time and saying, how can you just say we believe in tolerance? Tolerance just means we have to put up with someone. That doesn't really mean that we support them, that we keep them in our hearts with equal value. And he gave this long sigh. And he said, I don't know how many times I've heard that question. We've got to start somewhere. There are people for whom tolerance is just as far as they can see themselves going. So we've got to start where people are. But I simply say to myself and to all of you, we need to find more than slogans and words. Action is what we need to do in ourselves and in others. And in closing, I'd like to share a mantra that has become my own. It was written by Edward Everett Hale, a Unitarian minister, and it's in our hymnal. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. That I can do, not just that I can say. May it be so for you and for me.
Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This congregation depends entirely upon the generosity of its members and friends. You can donate by going to our website at nvuu.org and clicking on the yellow donate button on the left-hand side, or send a check to NVUU at 1625 Salvador Avenue, Napa, California, 94558. Once a month, our congregation donates our offering to a local organization that shares our values. Today, that organization is the Boys and Girls Club of Napa Valley. If I'm not mistaken, I think we do not have Greg Boyers here. I think that's correct. The Boys and Girls Club of Napa Valley offers after-school programs to all youth between the ages of 6 and 18 at 2 main clubhouses, 6 school sites, and a teen center. They are open Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. They also offer a summer day camp and similar activities on days during the school year when school is not in session. All of these services are offered at low cost. Components of their academic curricula are digital literacy, college readiness, STEM programs, and financial responsibility. In addition, they teach healthy lifestyles, athletics, character and leadership, and the arts. Their youth members appreciate the opportunity to spend time with friends and work on homework in a safe and positive environment. Less than 1/3 of the income of the Boys and Girls Club is from membership fees. Grants, fundraising events, and donations provide 2/3 of their revenue. 70% of their expenditures are for staff and supplies. So all donations will be sent to the Boys and Girls Club of Napa Valley unless the check is marked as pledge in the memo line. All checks should be made out to NVUU. The offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you for your many gifts. All you do and all you give are vital to building the beloved community in our region and beyond. If you are new to NVUU, we invite you to visit our website at nvuu.org and fill out the visitors form. This will get you onto our mailing list and you will receive information about upcoming events and services. We also invite you to our Zoom social hour after the service at this same Zoom link. We like to take about 10 minutes in between to stretch, take a bio break, or have a snack. Then we come back. We look forward to seeing you there. Now please join in singing our closing hymn. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts out into the world until we meet again.
As we go from this place, let us acknowledge our common values in ways that move us beyond simple lip service to a greater love and active support for each other in all our beautiful varieties. And together, may we recognize the inherent worth and dignity of each person and move forward into a bright new day, intent on the good, the honest, and the true for all. That is our work today and into the future. The only question is how we will each go about that critical task. But let us move ahead, starting where we are here and now, acting for justice, equity, and compassion. Amen, namaste, and blessed be.